Hey everyone, Long here, and I just want first off, I said a long time ago on my ex that I would never go see the Odyssey because honestly I had no interest in it whatsoever. I was planning on completely skipping out on this movie, and then for some reason, a friend of mine who I've known for many years of my life decided they wanted to get me a ticket to go see the Odyssey. I guess my friend was really enthused about the prospect of being able to see a movie like the Odyssey. I didn't bother going and asking more about it, so I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? So I went to go see it, and sure enough. It was everything I expected it to be and far worse than I thought. So, to sum it up, oh, before I even get into my summation, I just want to give a shout out to my friend for allowing me the opportunity to go see the Odyssey. It was a late night movie, but it was still a lot of fun getting to see it with my buddy, and then another friend of ours, and so we had a good time watching the movie together, and so we talked about it just a little bit, but after that, I was like, I just kind of lost interest in like talking to it because I didn't have the heart. Okay, the friend referring to is a dear friend of mine. I do not want to say anything um to hurt the friendship that we have, and so eventually this person and then our mutual friend are going to eventually find this review. So, but I need to come out with it and just simply say I did not like this one whatsoever. I mean, like Christopher Nolan, great film, great vision, legendary filmmaker. Very much loved Oppenheimer, and then his take on his Batman trilogy take. He has his own interpretation, and so I just left it as that. So, for some reason, he went with the Emily Wilson methodology, approach, the adaptation for the Odyssey instead of properly adapting Homer's The Odyssey. Now, granted, it probably was a lot easier to adapt into a 3 hour movie, and then even more so, I mean, it was the more modernized version because it used a lot of English language, but then there were also a lot of modern day sensibilities. Basically, the movie got rendered into an anti-war propaganda film, and that is some, and I say this a lot. Probably I don't say it enough here on my channel, but truly, like, this is one of those times where you do not attempt to tie reality with fantasy, because that's what the Odyssey was. I know a lot of people say it's historical fiction, and it probably is because of the very influences that it derives from, which is which is like a Greek civilization. They tell the story many times over, many years, and they tell and they retell and retell. And so this was meant to be a fantasy story about being able to come home after spending so many years away from home, fighting someone else's war, and just wanting to get home. And then with the sheer amount of arrogance that was on display, like on the voyage home, forced this man to Odysseus to like just think about to be lost and drift ashore, and in ways that were like more fantastical than what this movie had to offer. At least people attempted, in previous versions, like before the thousands, people actually did at least try to speak with Greek accents, and in fact there were actually like Greek actors who happened to take part in this. There were even a few Italians in the '90s version of the Odyssey, which was like a pretty long, multi-part like miniseries, which I very much enjoyed back in that time. Um, and to me, that will always be the Odyssey, and this wasn't it. Helen is not Helen. It is just basically someone who they said was Helen, um, but if you had to like try to tell me, um, if you had to tell me like right then and there that this is the face that launched 1,000 ships, you're not convincing me. It's almost like you had to stick that quote in because you wanted to affirm people that this was the face that launched 1,000 ships. Now, don't get me wrong, Lupita Nyong'o, who played Helen, is a beautiful woman, but she is definitely not Helen of Troy. And I don't really appreciate like when there's blackwashing going on in in cinema. And quite honestly, like I don't think it was very smart of Lupita Nyong'o to basically like tell off Homer metaphorically about screen time because Homer wasn't even alive. Greeks did not have any semblance of screen time whatsoever, and to me, this strikes me as a cast that is woefully ignorant of the past, and I don't think they care very much because this is about uh, modernity and just basically forcing it down other people's throats, and then like using past stories as a platform for modern for modern Hollywood, the modern audience, modern this, modern that, and I'm very disappointed honestly because it really sucks to see like how badly it messed up like Hollywood is, and this like the elitists who continue to you desecrate like like old time favorites because they just happen to have the biggest platforms. And it also is amazing to me that they didn't bother trying to like reach out to the Greeks. um I mean, like I mean, if you look at the IMDb credits, there were at least a few Greeks, like working on that crew, but not the casting necessary. Not the casting. Not a single Greek appeared on screen in the movie. It was just basically a diverse cast of whites, blacks, Asians, even Latinos, none of whom I have issues with in any other setting, but they basically like hijacked a Greek mythology and turned it into a multicultural anti-war propaganda piece. So effectively, for this generation, if unless people were actually willing to look back on past adaptations, Greek mythology is basically screwed beyond belief, and I think it has been destroyed to the point where, like, yeah, to where like this is basically what people are going to accept that this is what Greek mythology is. And and so I taken a look at some of like the box office performances, and I've seen the news stories. There's already a lot of push to basically declare the Odyssey to be like to be a victory in terms of like woke culture. And to me, like I don't buy that for a second, for any given moment. It is a movie that like hasn't reached its second weekend yet, so but it's not a movie that I'm gonna like take any further interest in. I just wanted to go ahead and put out my thoughts there because my humble view is that this is not the Odyssey. It is basically Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. That's basically all this is. It's not Homer's The Odyssey. It's not even Emily Wilson's The Odyssey because she herself was actually disappointed in like how badly mangled this movie was. A 3-hour movie which apparently cheapened a lot of the elements that were there because the women did not have a huge like presence in the movie whatsoever. I mean, they just basically shouted a bunch of lines that that were recognizable, and that like you see it in the books, you see it in the in past adaptations in some variation, but like the women don't really have much of a presence here, and it's so to basically call it a feminist like empowerment film, it's really out of bounds. And anyone who perpetuates that kind of narrative, not really something that um like they really tried too hard to sell that, and I'm not buying. Um, Now going so as you may know, like I don't even like I'm not even interested in talking about the plot. I'm just basically ranting at this point about the Odyssey. I think for the most part people actually do know what the Odyssey is. But to the uninitiated, I think Nolan really needed to do a better job at least, giving some kind of like a backstory with some of the famous characters, especially if he's going to do his own take on it. I mean, this guy's been like waiting his whole life to make a movie um, based off of the Odyssey, and I don't think he succeeded as well as like a lot of people are giving him credit for. Of course, now the box office will have you, begging to differ with my viewpoints. I mean, it has broken over $250 million in earnings, like so, about half and half between between like domestic here in the US and then international, which is everywhere else, except maybe Greece. Who knows? Maybe they are playing in Greece, or maybe they're not. I don't know. And quite frankly, that doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is that we all knew that movie was going to make its money back, and maybe a little bit of change too. Um, but yeah, I mean, is it going to be that like master? Is it going to be that box office smash that modern day Hollywood is looking for? Um, only time will tell. I mean, like the second weekend is coming up, but I don't know. I don't think it really will. I mean, like there are some theaters that have sold out, that are on the way or got close to being sold out. I only know is that like the night that we went, it was a late night, so there really wasn't a lot of people who went to see it. So I mean, like I will say this: if they enjoyed the movie, bravo to them. I hope that they did, but I want to be able to like put out my own voice out here, which is that I personally did not enjoy this movie whatsoever. So here's my actual gripe about it. I mean, let's put aside the modernity that's been forced on here, the anti-war message, and even the race swaps. Overall, the movie just does not hold up because because the narrative structure itself is really flawed. It goes back and forth, and it basically plays out like like the like a good chunk. The first two thirds of the movie plays like Odysseus is sitting on some kind of like on some therapist's chair, and the therapist happens to be Calypso. He's ultimately so Calypso being the one who traps him after he loses his entire crew on the way home. Basically, it plays like a reflection of the actions that Matt Damon's Odysseus took. Which, by the way, I did not even bother liking Odysseus's character. I think Matt Damon is has effectively sold out to modern day Hollywood because there's no pushback. I mean, it's just a lot of feeling sorry for himself, and then it's for the mistakes he's made. But basically, to me, this feels more like like a therapy session for the first two thirds of the movie, and so rather than allow for any fantasy to happen, I mean. This is basically like the gateway for Christopher Nolan to basically suck out the fantasy part of Troy. The invasion of Troy, the destruction of Troy, and then the journey home. So, which to me is completely subverted, because Odysseus does not want to come home, and to me, like that, and already right there, if Odysseus himself is not interested in coming home, why are we watching the journey? Because do I want to spend the next 3 hours like hearing some like bearded butthead like try like complain and whine about like why he doesn't want to come home? At the end of the day, like to me this is so it's satirical. I think like back in the day, if anyone came up with an idea on it, I guarantee you that Kevin Smith, aka Silent Bob, would have jumped on the opportunity and he would have parodied the crap out of that subject. No, instead, what ends up happening is that what ends up happening is that this is basically a dour like reason why you don't go to war with people, why you don't go to war with people. What the hell is this? I mean, this is just a fantasy story. I mean, basically, Troy was just a backdrop. I mean, like, I'm going to so if you like care to like tie fantasy with reality and you try to guilt me for like wanting the destruction of a city, well, then I say to you, you need to get a life because quite honestly, this was never, you know, stories like the Odyssey and Troy were never meant to be like, like about life lessons. The Iliad. The Iliad, the Odyssey were never meant to be like a well, there. I mean, like there are life lessons that you get, but they're basically just fables. They're just stories that people tell. Was did Troy exist? I mean, did it? I mean, maybe. But I don't know about that. I mean, like all I took it was that these were just basically fantastical stories that people read about and then they wrote about and then they passed the story from generation to generation and they told it. I mean, basically it was just like the backdrop is that like Helen uh got drawn to Troy, a war got started over this and then, so that's basically just surface level. I mean, basically, what it amounts to is that Helen was the face that launched 1,000 ships. She was basically the reason, the cover reason that they chose to invade Troy. Now, in a fantasy setting, like that's more than enough for me to like read a story about like how two like factions ended up going to war against each other, and in the end, like tragically, Troy did get destroyed, but there were a lot of battles that were fought. So a lot of great stories are fought, and Troy being like a kind of a background for everything that the story what that this like mythology sets up. It sets up Odysseus, who's just trying to like, who did like who was away from home for a long time, and is finally able to come home. But he's arrogant about it because the reason why he was that arrogant, and in the way that I read it back in the day, was that because his side won a war, and even though like an entire city was raised basically to the ground, all of its gods being like disrespected, Odysseus felt like was had that bravado, wanted to take the chance, take a lot of different chances, and he helped contribute to a lot of like the destruction of Troy, starting with that horse. And of course, and then coming home, he has like fantastic encounters with the Cyclops, Scylla Charybdis, witches, the sirens, and you actually got to see the sirens, whereas in Nolan's adaptation, you only saw fog, and then you saw like silhouettes of this. You didn't even see silhouettes. You just saw like clouds that kind of made you think, well, these are the sirens. So, and yeah, I mean, I would basically tell you about like how Nolan assumes that you know everything, but I'm not even gonna go there, because quite honestly, like everything about this movie was just so poorly like made in ways that just no longer made sense to me. And yeah, yeah, I honestly, at the end of so basically, like when you set out to make a movie the way that like Nolan did, and then having the crew participate, cast and crew participate the way that they did, there's really no fun in it anymore. I mean, like, why would so the characterization of like the Odyssey, where you basically guilt the main character, to a point where he doesn't want to come home, you've already taken out the interest in me about the journey home. Because at the end, like because of the therapy session that happens in the first like acts of the Odyssey, basically like he's elected to like turn himself into the Hague. and that's basically what's happened here is that Odysseus and yeah, like he this whole time he's like talking about defying the gods, and then for some reason, like because he felt guilt about what he did in Troy, he decides to turn himself into the Greek version of the Hague. You know, it's like basically he's turning over himself instead of like coming home and is actually enjoying home. And it's just it doesn't make any sense. Well, and so now you've lost me because now I don't want to feel invested in the journey. I just some mopey like a guy who just decided his life sucks, his fantasy world sucks, his age is falling apart, and so like I just can't believe that for the life of me that there are people who actually think that this is how the Iliad, the Odyssey should have been looked at from this modern day perspective. And then at the end of the day, it's just like, yeah, as you can tell, I'm very much incensed in in that perspective because forgetting about all that race swapping and all that stuff, um, this was like a very depressing movie, and it's not depressing in the way that the Passion of the Christ was to me, because Jesus Christ was, for all intents and purposes, is a very positive character. This is not Jesus Christ. This is a mythological figure named Odysseus, and basically you've taken away his reason to want to come home. And to me, I think that's just I think that in itself that subversion ends up ruining the movie itself. So but people seem to respond well to it. So I guess that will embolden Hollywood to go in and rip apart more of these mythologies and just basically do it in the name of the message. And that to me is the most disappointing part about the Odyssey, is that he basically just set off, like continued to set off a movement to continue with this, the destruction, modern day destruction of all these, fantastical tales that we've all grown up to love. Let me put it this way: if um if Hollywood could find a way to turn Goldilocks and the Three Bears into a modern day take on why Goldilocks was right all along, about breaking into like some bears' houses and eat their food, sleep in their beds, they would do it. That's just basically how I see it as. So yeah, overall, I personally did not care for Nolan's The Odyssey. But but my friends ended up loving the Odyssey. I didn't have the heart to basically tell them that they were wrong for it. So I just basically going to leave it to their devices. Hopefully they'll sleep on it a little bit more. And if they do end up seeing this review, okay, that's fine. That's more than okay. But at the same time, I just wanted to thank them for letting me see this movie, even though I said I wouldn't. But I only saw it because they actually were willing to pay for my ticket. So, and yeah, that's all I can say about that. But I do care about my friends a lot, and so yeah, I'll just continue to see them and talk to them for as long as they want me around. But yeah, ultimately, I ended up feeling about as miserable as how the movie was overall. So, no joy, nothing fantastical. It was just a lot of moping around and just yeah. This is basically a doomed movie from the start, and I'm not really a fan of subverting fantasies to make viewers feel horrible about liking, things like the Odyssey. So anyway, more power to you if you happen to like it, and feel free to rip me up in the comments if you want. Maybe even share this with peeps like on social media. Make fun of me all you want, but ultimately, I'm gonna just put it out there because this was the most depressing movie I've seen in my life, and yeah, and it really is disappointing to see like that. Yeah, I wanted to be a movie critic, and I guess this will be my way of doing so. But anyway, that's it for me. I'm just gonna go ahead and play some games, and then just get on with the rest of my day. So anyway, thanks a lot for checking out my review. I hope that you enjoyed it, or if you didn't enjoy it, let me know why. Um, Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm all for it. So, all right. But anyway, if you want to see more content like this, then please subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell. I'm gonna start putting out more reviews on this channel. But otherwise, you want to check out my main channel where I do, like game reviews, gameplay impressions, and also like a bunch of Just Dance content, which I'm actually known for. Feel free to do so as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Hang loose.